Do you feel that to the Stars Academy and what they did, that was a government sanctioned effort, or do you believe that there were just government personnel that came out and sanctioned, hey, we need to get this out of the open? Mr. Christopher Mellon just admitted on James Fox's documentary, I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially, I believe his words were, twisting the rules or bending the rules a little bit to get this out. Who orchestrated that movement and that push that ultimately happened at the end of 2017?
Look, we don't know the full origin story, and they're not telling us the origin story. They hint a little bit, they mention something here, but in terms of, we're not going to get that. Because the origin story begins literally within the military intelligence complex, mostly in the Pentagon, but CIA people were involved, and others working in different agencies and so forth, all with security clearances, all full careers. That's the TTS team, and you know who they are, and your viewers can go to their website and read their resumes. I'm absolutely convinced there is no way that this ever happens without support from within the MIC. We don't know how broad it is. We don't know how far up the chain of command it goes, but it's simply not possible. There's just no way. These people have all kinds of non-disclosure agreements, and they have security clearances, and they're going to come out and do this. And the Department of Defense is going, well, we can't stop them. Hey, it's a free country. And no, absolutely not. So that's point one. Point two. We also know that Herman Kahn, the CIA careerist, who was part of the TTA, actually stated to one of our colleagues that there are 30 or 40 people within the Department of Defense who are, how would you say, backing them up, right? So, yes, it is informally sanctioned. It has to be informally sanctioned, which gets us to a key point. What's going on here is extraordinarily complicated. This is not easy. You have to admire the courage to even attempt it, right? So what has happened, as far as I can tell, is that enough support within the Department of Defense developed, at what level we're not sure, to provide cover for these people to go and do what they do. I assume there is also plenty of elements within the MIC that don't want this. They didn't want it. But however strong the detractors are, the people backing them up are apparently powerful enough that they're covered. As you know, in the 3 years, they have not been attacked by any of the agencies or by the military services. There has been no orchestrated effort from within the government to in any way undermine what they're doing.
You're talking about TTSA?
Yes.
Because I'd only respectfully disagree, simply because the Pentagon has, and this leads into my next question, so if you don't mind if I just jump in here. Sure. The Pentagon obviously has muddied the water considerably. Correct. With statements about Mr. Luis Elizondo specifically, which in my opinion is unprecedented. They normally leave names out of it. Snowden, I could think, is really the only more modern example of them taking shots through press statements against a specific American either contractor or serviceman. So for them to go on the record and say this, for me was a little bit, unprecedented in the fact that they did that. So let me ask you that.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. Look,
but you have to admit that was a shot to essentially undermine that effort.
Look, let's get context to this. By the way, as far as Snowden is concerned, we've had people in the Congress call for his execution. So it's a little stronger response to Edward Snowden. Again, remember I said this is an incredibly complex thing that happened. All right. So one of the problems that they faced was that they were not going to be able to, and I'm sure did not, send out emails to all of the military services, intelligence agencies, and all the PR or public relations departments of all these entities saying, hey, in X number of months, we're going to launch this organization and it's going to be addressing ET issue. We're going to raise money and there's a whole bunch of high level people that have worked in government going to be. No, they didn't tell anybody. This thing came out absolutely cold. Well, let me put it this way. Tom DeLonge was hinting about it. And it was okay for him to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So he was hinting about it, and there was stuff going on a little bit behind the scenes that eventually got outed in the WikiLeaks release. But overall, this was all clandestine. It was all behind the scenes, except for some things that Tom said, but didn't get in any specifics. And so they launched. The rest of the government didn't know. The Pentagon office didn't know. The Navy didn't know. The Air Force didn't know. And so they're all caught, whatever. All right, so that's the way they had to do it. If they had notified all these entities in advance, they would have had so much pushback, they would have never gotten out the door. And so they come out the door, and then naturally, people such as yourself and others, they're going to start looking into this. Mm-hmm. What's going on here? Call up the Air Force, call up the Navy, call up the Defense Department. What do you know about this? Well, the Defense Department didn't know about this. And so what happened is the spokespeople for the Pentagon made a number of statements that was based on what they had, mm-hmm. that were ultimately wrong. And they were probably not happy either. Okay. And so that created some confusion, and it's understandable. And it's one of the difficulties they had to face. They were going to have to deal with the confusion that was going to emanate from various parts of the government when they suddenly turned up, and knowing that a lot of journalists are going to be then going to these entities, what the hell is going on here? And they basically handle that pretty well, mm-hmm. Not too bad. And as far as the fact that the Pentagon spokespeople may have said something critical of Elizondo or got something wrong, that's not the blowback I'm talking about. I'm talking about these gentlemen getting contacts from the Department of Defense basically saying, you will stop this or we will do things which we'll find very unpleasant. And I assure you, every one of them is vulnerable to all of that. That did not happen. I'm almost positive it didn't happen. So again, that tells me that gives me a sense of it. Now, mm-hmm. let me restate it a little bit. Remember my public relations theme. And I've stated this before, and I'll continue to do so. If the TTSA corrects me, if they get in touch with me and say, Mr. Bassett, you've got it wrong. This is not the way it was. This is not what's going on. And I'll listen. And I may very well come forward and say, wait a minute, I think I've rethought this. The TTSA is not a scientific organization being created to go and solve the extraterrestrial question. It's not going to create warp drive. It's going to look into these things, and those are things that may want to engage. Fine. They need to present something like that. But what is it fundamentally? The TTSA is a surrogate entity created to push the disclosure process forward in service to entities within the military intelligence complex that are convinced the truth embargo's days need to end, that this thing has got to stop. It's becoming an embarrassment and a problem, and is enormously more difficult every year to maintain. But they can't do it directly. The Department of Defense, guys in the Department of Defense just can't start calling up the New York Times and saying, hey, look, I got some gun camera footage here. You want to see it? They can't be speaking out. They serve the president. The president is their commander-in-chief. Technically, anything of that magnitude can't happen unless the president authorizes it. And so they have been contained. This is to say, from day one, 47 on, anyone in the government, in the military intelligence complex, who are sympathetic to getting this truth out have been contained legally and whatever. Okay, so what do? They came up with a brilliant idea. We'll create a surrogate entity made up of former members of the military intelligence complex, which will be very open about all of their ties and the work they did by and large and their clearances and so forth. Clearly one of us, but not working for us anymore. And so they will then take the story to the New York Times. So that gun camera footage goes from a vault in the Department of Defense, either to Elizondo directly, to Mellon directly, supposedly he got it in a parking lot, or to Elizondo and then to Mellon, whatever, and then it was taken to the New York Times. And everything that's happened since then, they are basically speaking for those elements in the military intelligence complex, whether it's the CIA or the Department of Defense, that this embargo needs to end. And they've been pursuing that in a very orderly fashion, which by and large is being done in a way that's clearly in concert, I think, with what the Department of Defense would want if they were doing it. In other words, national security issues, potential threat issues, set up congressional hearings, develop military witnesses, bring them in to testify. After enough testimony has taken place, then the door is open for the president to announce. This is the proper way to do it. I certainly have always supported that way. But nobody in the field, not me, not Greer, not anybody, has been remotely in a position to be able to do what these gentlemen have done, because we don't have the connections, the gravitas, and the imprimatur provided by people within government. We are outsiders trying to force the government to do what it doesn't want to do. Now we're in a situation where we're trying to help the government do what it wants to do, which is why over the last 3 years, you probably noticed, I haven't done much. I made a decision to stay out of their way. In other words, I'm going to let the TTSA do what it needs to do. I'll follow it closely. I'll comment on it from time to time, but I'm not going to try to, get out there and in front of them and whatever. No, they are the point of the spear. They're going to make this happen. They are going to cross the TTSA has taken the football across the end zone, into the end zone. They're going to spike the ball, and they're going to get the Super Bowl trophy. And good on them, because if that's what it takes, by God, that's what we have to do.